Good evening. Good in its spiritual sense. An evening of now. An evening of stillness. An evening of release from the hushed hurry that has followed us all day. An evening of communing with the presence that is not waiting for us in some other hour, but is, even now, closer than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. And I want to say it softly, because we will not argue tonight. We will sit with a simple truth until it begins to disclose itself. We have come out of a world that prides itself on readiness. Contingency plans, backup plans, projections and forecasts, and what-if charts. The mind forever leaning forward as if salvation lived one meeting ahead. I am not condemning it. No, I know that habit. I have gone to sleep with numbers in my head and awakened with a list already typing itself across my mind. That movement is not laziness, it is hunger. Hunger for safety, for assurance that our loved ones will be cared for, that there will be bread on the table and strength for the day. Beautiful. The hunger is holy. But let us try to understand what feeds it. I am going to give you a sentence, and I ask you to let it rest in you without resenting it. Tomorrow has no grace. Not as poetry, no. As a practical spiritual fact to be tested in your own experience. Grace is presence, and presence is always now. When the mind leans into tomorrow, it steps out of the only place where God is ever realized. Then the weight descends. We call it tomorrow, but what is it really? It is the absence of felt grace in this instant, the absence of realized God, not the presence of some massive fact out there waiting to crush us. Do you see? The imagined time swells because the living presence thins in our awareness. I am not announcing a war on calendars or honest planning. Please do not hear that. I am not asking you to be careless with your duties. I am saying that living in a time that does not contain God's felt presence is the one carelessness we can no longer afford. Jesus said, "Take no thought for the morrow." And I do not hear prohibition of action. I hear prohibition of anxieties thrown in us. Wise living? Yes. Responsible appointments? Yes. Locks on doors and gas in the car? Yes. But inner residence here, only here, where the Father within doeth the works. And this evening, we will not try to prove it with debate. We will prove it by a little tasting. We will move from worry into a few quiet seconds of contact, and then back into sane daily living. And we will watch whether the burden we called tomorrow does not loosen right where we sit. If even for a breath you notice a settling, a softness, a slight lifting over the heart, that is not your cleverness. That is grace announcing, I am on the field now. Keep your finger on your lip, keep it sacred, and let us begin to suspect that what felt so heavy was never facts stacked against us, but only the dimness of presence in this moment, now. Now let us look right at the word Jesus used, take no thought, and understand it in the way it operates inside us. I do not hear in that word a ban on writing a date in a book or filling the tank before a trip. I hear this: do not take tomorrow into your hands in imagination. Do not seize it and sculpt it and rehearse it until you have carried it as a stone in the chest today. You know that movement. The mind builds pictures, how the meeting will go, what the diagnosis will be, where the money will come from. And it sits there, polishing those pictures as if they were idols on a shelf. That inner picture-making is the taking. That is the thought Jesus prohibited. Let me interrupt myself to say what I do not mean, so that there is no misunderstanding. I do not mean a life of irresponsibility, or a dreamy floating through the day, ignoring commitments. No. I know better than to try to live that way, and I would not insult you by recommending it. I do mean the end of inward rehearsing, forecasting, calculating as a substitute for God. The end of trusting mental movies to secure what only realized presence secures. Do you notice the difference? Foresight is quiet. It consults wisdom and sets the alarm and lays out the tools. Then it rests. Worry is compulsive. It consults fear, and even when the tools are in place, it keeps churning because its confidence is in its churning. One is sober stewardship. The other is a little private idle temple in the head. And see how Jesus ties it to bread. Give us this day our daily bread. Not next month's warehouse, this day's manna. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Sufficient unto the day also is the grace thereof. The Christ teaching is timed in 24-hour measures. This hour, this moment. Because God is not a package shipped ahead. God is presence realized now. And I say to you by experience, when inner contact is made now, the outer steps for later arrange themselves with a wisdom that is not our fretfulness. Beautifully. Sometimes with the same plan you had on paper, sometimes with a better one, but without the old strain. Now remember this, because it becomes operational for you. If today I place my attention in tomorrow, if I live from that imagined time, where have I put the kingdom? Outside me, later. But the Master said, the kingdom of God is within you. Within you where? Here. Now. If I live in inner picture-making, I am living off-center, out of my own sanctuary, and then I must push. If I return to realized presence, even for a breath, I can say with him, I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. Then foresight becomes an instrument of peace instead of a shrine of fear. So ask it gently as we move on. Where is my attention living? In the imagined theater of tomorrow, or in the realized kingdom within, now? And if I will not take thought, will not seize and carry those pictures, will the bread for this day not appear as needed, and the step for tomorrow disclose itself when tomorrow arrives as now? Do you doubt it? Let us prove it, not by argument, but by practice. Before we practice, let me lay down the law itself so clearly that there can be no confusion. Grace is never stored. It is encountered, always now. Tomorrow is a vacuum as far as grace is concerned. It has no air to breathe, no light to see by, no bread to eat. Why? Because grace is not a substance laid away in a warehouse. Grace is presence, and presence is never late and never early. It is the living now. Now remember this. You have never lived in tomorrow. You have only lived in the moment that arrived, and upon arriving, was called now. If you will be honest with yourself, you will see that all your tomorrows, without exception, have shown up as this breath, this instant, this awareness. And when they did, whatever peace or clarity you knew was not because of something you had stored. It was because, in that instant, contact was made or not made. I am going to interrupt myself. Do you recall the story of manna? It could not be kept overnight. Why? Because the teaching in it was not agricultural. It was spiritual. It was the same law we are stating. The Father gives bread as presence, not as hoarded supply. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. and sufficient unto the day also is the grace thereof. Now take this inside the kingdom within framework, because that is where it operates. The kingdom of God is within you. Within you where? In your very consciousness, in the deep place that is closer to you than breathing. Therefore, contact cannot be a future event. It cannot be an appointment on a calendar. It must be realized in this instant, or it is not realized at all. And when it is realized, I can of mine own self do nothing becomes more than a verse. It becomes the shift of agency. The Father within me doeth the works. Now. Not later, not when the deal closes, not when the report turns favorable. Now. There are then two securities. One is mental security, projection, savings of thought, strategic control, the little storehouse in the head where we pile scenarios and contingencies and hope to feel full. But that storehouse leaks. It always leaks, because it is imagination. The other is spiritual security, inner assurance that the Father within is on the field. And the sign of it is immediate, a quieting, a softening, a ceasing from push, even while the outer plan remains in motion. The mind says, I am safe because I have covered every angle. Presence says, I am safe because God is here, and where God is, I am. Do you see how worry betrays its hidden creed? It whispers that God is absent until the conditions improve. It treats the presence as a future reward earned by sufficient strain. That is separation. Spiritual practice reverses the assumption at the root. It says, God is here, before any change, during any change, after any change. And because God is here, the change that is needed will unfold as the Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. Not because I have stored up tomorrow, but because I have yielded now. Hold this as we go on. Tomorrow offers you no grace to carry. Now offers you the whole kingdom. And if you will meet the arriving moment with inner contact instead of mental stockpiling, you will find that what you called security ripens into something better. A steady fruitage of right steps taken without the old strain, and an ease that does not wait for circumstances to justify it, because its justification is presence itself. Now let us look at the core of this message as a working principle, not as a pious sentence we hang on the wall. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. I am not quoting that to be devout. I am giving you the method by which anxiety is dissolved and tomorrow thinking is healed. For years, I believed I had to carry outcomes on my back, make people behave, make business cooperate, make the body respond. And the strange thing is, I didn't know that I was trying to be author, director, actor, and critic all at once. No wonder the chest tightens. No wonder sleep thins. Anxiety is misplaced agency. It is the mind doing tomorrow's work today. Do you see how it operates? The mind tries to guarantee supply by rehearsing 10 strategies before breakfast. It tries to manage another's reaction by composing 3 different versions of the conversation and polishing them until they shine with fear. It pre-solves conflict by fighting it in imagination and calling that prudence. That entire display is, I can of mine own self. I, the separate one, the isolated manager. Now remember this. You will never need to be that manager. You will only need to know God as presence now. Everything else flows out of that. I am going to interrupt myself to make the correction gentle. This is not passivity. We are not going to sit under a tree and wait for groceries to fall from the sky. We are going to reverse the order of authorship. Our function is not to create a future. Our function is to attain inner stillness where divine intelligence is felt and acts. First, the kingdom, realized within. Then the plan, the word, the step, given without strain. Go within, shut the door, acknowledge, Father, thou art here. That is not an escape from responsibility. It is right government. It is the difference between dragging a cart uphill alone and discovering that the cart has an engine. And here's the subtle shift by which you may recognize the moment agency reverses. The inner voice that says, I must figure this out, and quickly, melts into, I will be still. I will acknowledge the presence. The hands unclench. The breath takes itself more deeply. The mind that was racing in 10 lanes settles into one quiet road. In that quiet, thoughts still come, but they come as givenness, not compulsion. Sometimes the very same action you were plotting appears. Call this one, send that note, adjust that figure. But it comes without push and without fear, as if it were handed to you with the confidence of peace. Now watch the fruit of this right order, because the Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. Decisions become simpler, not necessarily easier to the ego that wanted applause, but simpler in their rightness. Words reduce in number and increase in weight. You may find that a meeting which required an hour of arm wrestling yesterday comes right in 10 minutes today, with less speaking and more agreement. You will notice the body signaling relief. The belly softens, the shoulders drop, even the face loosens its grip. That is evidence. That is God on the field. And as you go on like this, present contact first, action second, you learn something precious. Life is not yours to manage alone. The works are not yours to produce. They are yours to witness. And the moment you stop managing tomorrow and acknowledge the indwelling Father, you will find that tomorrow, when it arrives as now, is already provided for. Because the worker was never absent and never late. Let us not leave this as a theory. Let us taste. Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt myself right here and ask you to lay down your cleverness for a moment. Put both feet on the floor if you can. Let the hands rest in your lap, open, palms easy. If it is comfortable, close the eyes. If not, lower them. Lift the shoulders up toward the ears just once and let them drop. Again. And let the breath take itself. Do not make a breath. Notice a breath. We will close the door on the world, and that includes the little world called tomorrow. When you close your eyes, you close the door on the world. Do you feel that? Already the sound of the inner room begins to change. Now, with no effort at all, just a noticing, acknowledge. Father, thou art here. Not words to persuade, but a simple recognition. He is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Do not recite it. Rest your attention in it. Stayed on thee. And do you observe, without forcing, without shoving, that the thoughts which were darting about begin to tire of their running? They slow. One or two still dash through. What about that call tomorrow? What about that bill? Do not fight them. Recognize them as time images, pictures of a place where you have never lived. Let them pass as you would let a bird cross the sky. Stay on thee. I am not asking you to manufacture peace. I am inviting you to notice it. It announces itself as a softening in the chest, as the belly letting go, as a slight brightening right here behind the forehead. 5 seconds may come, 10 seconds. Beautiful. That is not your achievement. That is the Father that seeth in secret, rewarding openly in the coin of stillness. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. Stay there, not the pictures. If another tomorrow thought returns, do not make a project of defeating it. That would only crown it king again. Acknowledge it gently, tomorrow image, and return. Father, thou art here. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace. And let the words evaporate until only the awareness remains. Presence without a sentence. Do you notice the breath has lengthened of its own accord? Do you notice you are not propping the world up just now? You are not managing it. You are letting the Father within do the works, the first work being peace. Hold a few more seconds. No push. Stayed on thee. If it fades, thank it and rest again. A handful of seconds like this are more reliable than hours of forecasting because they are evidence. Inner fruit first, outer fruit after. This is our proof, the immediate easing, the quieting, the sense that something greater than our planning has stepped onto the field. Now, let the eyes open without breaking the thread. Keep your finger on your lip, inwardly, guard the sacredness. Do not speak about it. Live out from it. Notice whether the room is the same room. The tasks are the same tasks, but the doer has changed. And when the next tomorrow image appears at the edge of thought, you have learned the diagnostic. Do not wrestle. Recognize and return. Close the door for 5 seconds if that is all that is given. It is enough. Perfect peace does not wait for a calendar. It answers a mind stayed, even briefly, on thee. Now, while that thread of stillness is still in your hand, let us turn to something very ordinary and very holy when rightly ordered. Planning. And let us see when it becomes a graven image carried in the pocket of the mind. I do not mean that we should not arrange our days. Of course we do. We set appointments, we lay out tools, we budget money and time. Beautiful. That is stewardship. But here is the line, and we must name it without fear. Planning becomes idolatry the instant we ask it to give us what only God gives. The moment the mind says, I will be at peace because my plan is airtight, the plan has taken the seat of the comforter. That is the worship of a schedule. That is a golden calf made of bullet points. Do you feel the difference? Responsible planning consults wisdom, decides, and rests. Idolatrous planning consults fear, decides, and then keeps deciding the same decision 10 more times because its confidence is in its deciding. I am going to interrupt myself. Ask yourself quietly, what is it I am really trying to buy with these endless revisions? Safety? Approval? Control? And has it ever delivered grace? Has a polished forecast ever unclenched a jaw? Has a perfect itinerary ever yielded the deep exhale that came so simply in those 5 seconds of acknowledgement? Father, thou art here. No. The mind is trying to purchase peace with predictions. If I can just know how it turns out, then I can relax. But knowledge of outcomes never arrives. Only new variables arrive, and the mind must buy again, and again, and again. That is why tomorrow thinking never concludes. Its God is information, and information cannot supply presence. Underneath it is a more tender fear, and I want to speak to it kindly. The hidden fear is that God will not be present in the next hour, that we must preload enough certainty to carry us across a gap in grace. Now remember this, there is no gap in grace. He is closer to you than breathing, and nearer than hands and feet. Now. And since every tomorrow you have ever known has only arrived as now, the one who is present now cannot be absent then. When tomorrow comes, it does not bring grace with it like luggage. It reveals the same presence you can realize in this instant. Therefore, what we fear is not the future. We fear separation. And separation is not a fact. It is an unexamined assumption. Let us fix the lens. Tomorrow is not evil. It is simply not the container of grace. Grace is not time-bound, but it is time-experienced, only as now. So keep your calendar, keep your tools, keep your agreements, but do not keep your peace in them. Let the plan be a servant, not a savior. Test yourself gently. If changing the plan gives you peace, you were leaning on the plan. If realizing the presence gives you peace, you are leaning on God, and the plan can be adjusted with a steady hand. Here is the working order. First, inner contact. Father, thou art here. Until the breath eases and the pressure to secure outcomes loosens. Then, from that quiet, make the call, write the outline, buy the ticket, set the budget. Lay it on the altar and leave it there. If agitation returns, you know the diagnosis. The mind has slipped back to worship. Stop, return, acknowledge. You will discover that planning, kept in its place, gains accuracy without tyranny, and that the Father which seeth in secret rewardeth openly in a very practical way. Right steps, right timing, without the old strain. You will never need to know outcomes. You will only need to know God. And when you know God now, outcomes arrive as fruit instead of idols. Let us look at this as a law and not merely as a comfort. Daily bread is not poetry. It is the operating rhythm of grace. The Scripture gives us its pattern so plainly that we have to hurry past it to miss it. Manna came morning by morning and could not be hoarded. When they stored it up in fear, it spoiled. Why? Because the teaching was not about food storage, but about presence, God as now. Elijah did not receive a year's pantry. He was fed by ravens as needed, and when that brook dried, he was sent to a widow whose barrel did not overflow into pride. It simply did not fail. And when the multitudes were hungry, the master did not pull bread from yesterday. He looked up in the moment, blessed what was in his hands, and the supply appeared as needed. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. In time as now, in place as here. Now extend bread beyond loaves. Daily bread is the idea for the task before you. It is the patience for the child who is testing you this afternoon. It is the strength for the body to do today's walking. It is the timing that causes a phone to be answered at the right minute and a door to open with no pushing. It is protection that is felt as right place, right hour. It is right companionship, the one voice, the one hand that shows up when you are tempted to isolate. Bread is whatever the Father gives this day for this day's assignment. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. Therefore, what is necessary to express God's nature in this hour is present as this hour. I am going to interrupt myself to make this clear as a working rule. When consciousness rests in the now, in the quiet acknowledgement, Father, thou art here, supply is discovered, not manufactured. It is revealed as already on the field, and your part is to recognize and receive. When consciousness runs ahead into imagined time, lack is invented. The mind pictures needs it does not yet have and then trembles before its own pictures. Now remember this. Hoarding grace in imagination is the very act that hides it. You cannot bank presence for later. You can only realize it now. And realized now, it outflows as what this moment requires. Do not be troubled by the size of the day. Sometimes the day is an hour. Sometimes it is 5 minutes between one appointment and another. Sometimes it is a breath in a hospital corridor or in a boardroom. Give us this day our daily bread means also, give us this hour our hourly bread. And when the hour is smaller than an hour, the bread is smaller than a loaf, and just as sufficient. 5 seconds of stillness, and the needed word rises. 10 seconds of acknowledgement, and the next right step stands clear. Bring this home where you live. The bill is due at month's end. Health is uncertain. There is a tension at the table. All of these tempt you to step out of today into tomorrow images and to push. Do not do it. Close the door, even for half a minute, and say within yourself, Father, thou art here. Then ask, not, how will I cover the whole month, but, what is today's bread? Perhaps an honest call is given. Perhaps restraint is given. Perhaps the idea for a piece of work is given. Perhaps the grace to be quiet and kind in the kitchen this evening is given. Take the bread given for the day and stop there. Tomorrow is barren of grace until it arrives as now. As you practice in this way, you will watch the open reward. The knot in the stomach unties while the ledger is still the ledger. The right help appears without your hunting. Strength meets you on the stairs you thought you could not climb. Words reduce and accomplish more. Proof by fruit. You will learn the rhythm of the 24-hour economy of grace. Realized presence now, revealed supply now. And when tomorrow becomes now, it finds grace already on the field, because the Father within doeth the works. Not by your storing, but by your staying. What then changes when you stop borrowing trouble? First, the invisible climate changes. And because it changes, everything you touch responds differently. I have watched it in homes and offices and hospitals. The same people, the same contracts, the same files on the same desk. And yet, the air is different, because you are not pushing the world ahead of you with your forehead. Harmony appears where friction was assumed. Conversations that once bristled soften without rehearsed charm. Decisions that tangled in analysis stand up straight in a few plain sentences. And the strangest thing to the old mind is this: nothing has been added to your effort. The strain has been removed from it. Here is the chain as it actually operates. Inner contact is made. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Father, thou art here. And the grasping hand relaxes. The pressure to manage outcomes lessens. From that easing, intelligence that is not anxiety's child begins to move. Simple, direct, kindly. You place a call because it is yours to place, not because terror commands it. You decline a meeting because the light says no, not because resentment shouts. And then, as if the world had been waiting for a cue, the outer harmonies begin to line themselves. The email arrives with the missing piece. A partner who would not budge shifts this much. The customer who was angry reappears with a willingness that surprises even them. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. I have watched it in business fruitage so plain you could count it. The month closes with better figures, though the hours were fewer and the voice was quieter. A labor dispute that promised thunder turns to conversation at a table instead of shouting at a gate. Even the small signals, traffic openings on a crowded road, a clerk's smile that shortens an errand by 20 minutes, a letter that would have missed you by a day finds you by an hour. And in the body, too, do not overlook this. The same practice meets you as a steadier pulse, a breath that descends all the way to the belly, a night's sleep that returns without pills because the one who used to hold the world together by fear has gone off duty. These are evidences, fruit. Now I must say this so you will not stumble at the first shadow. Do not expect a life without events. I do not mean that. I don't mean a cloud-9 existence where telegrams never arrive or doctors never call. Events come as they always have, but they are met not with panic and the microscope of analysis, but with presence. Light first, then action. And action taken in light is different in feel and in result. The same hospital corridor is walked, but it is walked by one who is not alone. The same ledger is opened, but it is opened by a steward, not a beggar. How then shall you judge your progress? Not by the disappearance of scenes, but by the speed with which you return to stillness when the scene appears. That is the criterion. Yesterday the fear thought dragged you for an hour. Today you recognize it in a minute, imposter. A tomorrow image, and you close the door for 5 seconds and come back to thee. Yesterday the mind made projects out of every whisper. Today you notice the whisper and lay it on the altar before it grows teeth. That is growth. That is training. That is a mind stayed, even briefly, on God. By now I am in a position to say this to you with a great deal of authority. Not because I have become a strong person, but because grace has shown itself dependable in the now. I have seen supply increase with no new outer push. I have seen business relationships become kind without diplomacy. I have seen health respond as if a hand had been laid upon it, when the only change was 5 honest seconds of acknowledgement. Father, thou art here. And I have seen the open reward in places as far apart as Honolulu and London, and as close as a kitchen table where a child's eyes quieted because mother's heart did. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. Hold to that in secret and watch the fruit in the open. The evidence of living in the now is harmony that arrives without the old strain, guidance that appears without the old noise, and work that is done, beautifully, by the Father within. Let me give you, as simply as I can, the form of life that allows you to be thoroughly practical without ever again hiring fear as your manager. I call it the 2-level life. On the outer level, you keep appointments, you set budgets, you answer emails, you speak to the child, the client, the nurse. You sign papers and you wash dishes. That is the surface of stewardship. On the inner level, quietly, privately, faithfully, you remain in acknowledgement. Father, thou art here. The kingdom of God is within me. Where I am, God is. This is not a chant to impress heaven. It is the gentle turning of attention to the one who does the works. Outer doing by you, inner being by God. 2 levels, 1 life. Now the method, because I want you to be able to use this by breakfast tomorrow. Or rather, when breakfast arrives as now. Plan from stillness, that is the order. Before you sketch the day, close the door for 20 seconds, for 30. Father, thou art here. Do nothing with the mind for a moment. Let the breath take itself. When the ease appears, even slightly, then lay out your calls, your notes, your errands. Decide what can be decided. Put it on paper. And then, listen carefully. Release it. Do not keep rechecking it with fear as if worry were a guardian angel. Lay it on the altar and leave it there. If it needs changing later, it will be shown later. The same presence that guided the plan will guide the correction. I am going to interrupt myself and give you the simple language by which you return during the day, not as a device to twist outcomes, but as a reminder to rest your weight where it belongs. Where I am, God is. The kingdom of God is within me. Whisper it inwardly, without show, without force, the way you might touch your pocket to be sure the key is there. Once before an email, once before a meeting, once before stepping into the hallway or turning off the light at night. These are not spells, they are acknowledgments, and acknowledgment is the doorway through which grace shows itself as guidance, timing, word, restraint. Build the at-will habit with micro-practice. 20 to 30 seconds, many times a day. In a chair, at a sink, in a parking lot. Eyes open if they must be, half closed if they can be. A slight inward bow. Father, thou art here. Stayed on thee. It is better to return briefly and often than to attempt a grand hour and quit. This is how illumination becomes a daily experience. Touches of light again and again until the rhythm is yours. Now remember this sign. It will save you from hours of needless revisiting. You have crossed the line into anxious living the moment you feel you must think about it again to be safe. That is the cue, not to reopen the mental file, but to go within. Do not edit the plan. Acknowledge the presence. The pressure to redecide will fade in the light of God's nearness, and if any true adjustment is needed, it will present itself without compulsion. Live like this, two-level, and you will discover a marvel of simplicity. You act responsibly on the surface while resting within, and the fruit proves the wisdom of the order. Fewer words, greater weight. Fewer motions, truer steps. Planning keeps its place. Fear loses its job. And the Father within, who seeth in secret, rewardeth openly as the day unfolds, one now at a time. Let us seal this, quietly, as a covenant between your heart and the presence that has met you this evening. Not a public pledge, not a banner to wave, a private vow, sacred because it is hidden, that you will return to the now often and without show. Keep your finger on your lip. Do not tell the street what belongs to the inner room. No performance, no preaching, no trying to convince another soul. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. That is enough. Your part is the inward turning, the gentle acknowledgement, Father, thou art here, and then to live from what that acknowledgement gives. Here is the simple rule by which you keep faith with this covenant. Begin the day with a few minutes of stillness, before the phone, before the plan, while the world is not yet noisy. Close the door, let the breath take itself, and acknowledge, Father, thou art here. Stay until even 10 seconds of ease appear. Then rise and go about your stewardship. At midday, pause. Not long, unless long is given. 20 seconds. 30. Close the door inside yourself at your desk, in a hallway, even at a sink. Where I am, God is. And let the pressure reset to presence. At night, before sleep, release. Lay the day on the altar, people, tasks, mistakes, victories, and say within, the government is upon thy shoulder. If correction is needed, show it to me tomorrow as now. Then let it drop. 3 anchors: morning stillness, midday pause, evening release. This is how grace stays present, because you stay present to grace. I am going to interrupt myself to spare you the old condemnation. You will forget. You will wander into tomorrow 100 times in a day. Beautiful, because each forgetting will give you one more coming home. The victory is not in never straying. The victory is in returning 101 times without scolding yourself, without projects of self-improvement. Simply recognize, tomorrow image, and return. Father, thou art here. 5 seconds. 10. And start again. That is faithfulness. That is how the rhythm becomes yours. Now remember this. Tomorrow will arrive exactly as every tomorrow has ever arrived, in the form of a present moment. And in that moment, what you call tomorrow, grace will be there. Not because you dragged it through the night with worry, but because grace is always here. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. You will discover, to your humble joy, that the word you thought you would need then is given then. The strength you feared would not be there is there. The guidance you tried to purchase with forecasts stands quietly in the doorway when it is time to go. Keep this as a sacred, private covenant. Hold it without display. Practice it without strain. And let me leave you with the distilled imperative that will carry you when the mind tries to reopen its old files. You will never need to know tomorrow. You will only need to know God now.